All right, so in 2015, something big happened, and that was the Competitiveness Act. The first massive change by the Competitiveness Act is that it gave federal jurisdiction over spaceflight disputes, and that did not exist until then. So under 51 U.S.C. 501914G, federal jurisdiction, any claim by a third party or spaceflight participant for death, bodily injury, or property damage or loss resulting from an activity carried out under the license shall be exclusive jurisdiction of the federal courts. And I want you to remember that, under the license. The other massive change, is that the Competitiveness Act now requires a cross waiver. So cross waivers used to be required between operators in the U.S. government, operators and SFPs in the U.S. government, actually. And they were what we would call flow-down waivers, which meant that they don't just apply to the government and the operator, they also apply to all of their all of their subcontractors and contractors and employees and independent contractors, all of those people, all those vendors and service providers and manufacturers. They're all getting covered up by the cross waiver. But there was no requirement for the SFP and the operator to sign a cross waiver between the two of them. I mean, they would have, right? They most likely would have, but there was no federal requirement to do so, and now there is. So now Congress has told the FAA that a launch or reentry license issued or transferred under this chapter shall contain a provision requiring the licensee or transferee, so that's the operator, to make a reciprocal waiver of claims with applicable parties involved in launch services or reentry services, under which each party to the waiver agrees to be responsible for personal injury to, death, or property or loss sustained by it or its own employees resulting from an activity carried out under the applicable license. And then applicable parties, boom, spaceflight participants got added to the bottom of that. So now spaceflight participants are part of that federal cross waiver. That makes things very complicated. So what will the federal cross waiver look like? Well, we don't know yet, actually, because the FAA has not issued a template cross waiver. But they do have template cross waivers between spaceflight participant and the US. And so what you can look at is that you can look at that appendix, and assuming that they use one that is like that or very similar, this is what it's going to say. And you would probably follow the template because it's in the regulations, and deviating from them would probably open you up to not doing things properly. Okay, so under Appendix E, a spaceflight participant shall hold harmless the U.S., so assuming that they use this for operator, it will then read, shall hold harmless a CHSF operator and its contractors and subcontractors for bodily injury, including death or property damage sustained by spaceflight participant from licensed permitted activities, regardless of fault. But with a caveat, regardless of fault, except if the claims result from willful misconduct of the United States or its agents. Okay, so there's a roof, there's a ceiling to how much you can exculpate yourself, and it's willful misconduct. And before we go forward, we do need to mention one thing. Willful misconduct, you'd think, oh, that's intentional, right? No. Under federal law, willful misconduct actually can include gross negligence.